If we keep child sexual abuse as only something we can talk about seriously, we're never going to talk about it. My name's Jonny Pelham, and I'm a stand-up comedian. Hello, Apollo! How are we doing? We well? My comedy's personal, political, and no topic is off limits. I actually had sex for the first time when I was 8 with a man who was acting very immorally. I'm also a child sexual abuse survivor, and in 2019 I wrote a comedy show about my experiences. Everyone's bragging about how young they had sex on Freshers' Week. One guy was like, I had sex for the first time when I was 15. Another guy, that's nothing. I had sex for the first time when I was 14. And I really remember thinking, I've got an ace in the deck here. The show really connected with people, and I was shocked by how many people got in touch with me to talk about their own personal experience of childhood sexual abuse. I was stunned to hear how many people suffer in silence, particularly when I know it was only when I started talking about it that I started healing. I want to look at why so many children continue to be abused, how we can make it easier to talk about, and what we can do to try and stop it. Hey, Jonny. I've never thought about the subject of child sexual abuse finding a place in comedy, but you found it and managed it in such a cool way. Hey, Jonny. Just watch you on Dave. So this one's from Carol. Hi, you have made my 8-year-old self feel acknowledged and empowered. Hi, I watched you on Live at the Apollo the other night and wanted to thank you. So after Live at the Apollo, I got these messages, and on the one hand, it was brilliant. Made me feel great that I'd been able to help. And I also realised it was a bit freaky, because you suddenly realise, you know, shit, I've talked about being a victim of childhood sexual abuse publicly, and the fear of that sort of defining who I am, really, you know, because it's quite a narrow space to inhabit. And I guess that's why I wanted to do this doc, to go talk to someone else who'd had a similar experience to me, who's talked about it publicly, to see how they'd managed to own their survivorhood without being sort of defined by it. Hi, mate.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good to meet you, Ian.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Ian is a sexual abuse survivor. He first came forward in the 1990s about the abuse he suffered at the hands of his football coach, Barry Burnell. And he has gone on to found an organisation that helps other victims speak out within football. On average, it takes people 22 years from the time their abuse has stopped to tell anyone. I want to talk to Ian about why it is such a difficult conversation to have and how we can empower people to talk about it sooner.
So yeah, I guess let's dive in. Do you mind talking a bit about what happened to you as a child?
No, not at all.
So, how old were you when it began?
I was sort of 9, 10 years of age, and it went on for about 3.5 years-ish, and that was pretty much every weekend, every school holiday. It was all with the same abuser, football coach.
And, I mean, the person... I'm just going to tell you this to try and, we're on the same page. The person who abused me would have, full sex. Was that the same with you?
Yes, absolutely. It was the full range of abuse, from masturbation, oral sex, and buggery. And even on some occasions with another boy in the bed at the same time.
I was about 8 when it happened to me, and I got very angry, and then I sort of started messing around at school, and apparently, I don't remember doing this, I used to bang my head against the door and say that I wanted to kill myself. And then I just sort of stopped, I think, and I got very numb, and that's my strategy, really, was just to dissociate. Because, you know, you can't run, you can't fight, so you're just going to freeze. I was wondering how it impacted on you as a sort of child.
I remember going home the first time it happened and going to my bedroom and having these very intrusive thoughts of all the images of what had actually happened to me. And I remember focusing on a little rust spot on my radiator in my bedroom. And I just stared at it all night, until eventually I went to sleep. And I've said in the past that me and that rust spot became very good friends. I think I spent a long time in my life trying to suppress those thoughts because of the confusion, the guilt, the shame, and all the other emotions that go with it.
It took me 17 years to talk to someone about my childhood abuse. I know on average it takes 22 years. And I'm just wondering why you think it is such a difficult thing to talk about and why so many people keep it secret.
I think because in the majority there's a misconception about who it is who abusers are. And I think that the majority of abusers know very well the people they're abusing, and vice versa. My abuser absolutely ingratiated himself into my family, would come round for meals, turn up. It makes it so much more difficult to say anything.
I knew the person who abused me well. You know, the reality was it was someone I knew, someone I respected, someone I quite liked. Then it makes it so much more difficult to tell anyone because there's a relation, he's got a relationship with other people in your world and you're sort of chucking a grenade into your life if you mention it. Who was and how old were you when you first told someone about the abuse?
I was 26 years of age, and the first person I spoke to about it was my partner. We'd start to have a relationship and we'd had intimacy problems. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever had to say. I remember thinking, what will she think? Will she believe me?
And how was she?
She was fantastic.
Was she good?
She was absolutely amazing. But also, once I'd taken that leap of faith, I just remember feeling how much better I felt. Just by getting it off my chest.
Well, I started randomly telling people at parties when I was pissed and inappropriately telling people. And I think now I understand that as I wanted to talk to someone, but I didn't want to talk to anyone who I knew because I didn't want them to be weird around me.
Sure.
So I just fucking told randomers.
I used to take on the responsibility of thinking, making people feel this way. Yeah. I mean, I used to say to people, if you're having a party and you want to get rid of people at the end of the room, give us a ring. Give us a ring. I'll clear your house in 30 seconds. I'll just come in and start talking about my abuse, and they're gone. You know, it's that awkward. And I used to apologise for it, but more recently, I think I've learned to accept that actually it's other people's awkwardness. It's their narrative, not mine. And I think that's one of the great things I think that you're doing with your stand-up. By allowing people to laugh and see the funny side, the jokes in this stuff, or the ridiculousness in some of this stuff, give people permission not to be awkward.
When I did Apollo, I wanted someone to be able to turn around to someone and go, that happened to me. Because at the moment, it feels like the only place we have in our society to talk about this issue is in this serious space.
About a year ago, I started owning this part of my life. I started talking about it on stage, and it meant I'd have to make some changes, you know, like I'd have to tell my parents, because they shouldn't find out by turning on Live at the Apollo. Jesus, or reading a review in the Radio Times. Fucked as a boy, surprisingly upbeat.
What's great about comedy is, if you can make people laugh about it, you can move the conversation slightly, and it stops being piano music, someone crying, talking to a therapist. It moves it into a pub, or it moves it into, some people's lounge, and it just allows that conversation to begin in a different space. Because I think if we keep child sexual abuse as only something we can talk about seriously, with serious people talking about trauma in serious ways, we're never going to talk about it.
1 in 6 children have had some form of contact or non-contact childhood sexual abuse. And yet, even though there are millions of us, the experience still feels incredibly lonely. If we do want to get serious about stopping childhood sexual abuse, we need to find new ways to talk about it.
I found the Me Too movement so inspiring, and I really think we could have something similar around child sexual abuse, because there are millions upon millions of people, and if all of them would just be finding a way to go online and say Me Too without having to disclose personally the trauma of that abuse, I think it would shock people, and I think it would genuinely transform how we view ourselves as a society. Just to see the scale very explicitly and very clearly and go, fuck me, this is an issue that I don't have to deal with, because I personally know 5, 10, 15, 20 people myself who've been sexually abused as children.
If we can give people permission to be able to say, Me Too, that's the thing that's going to allow the freer conversations that we're looking to have and take it out of the awkward, you know, and get comfortable with the uncomfortable. That's what it's about.
Really positive conversation with Ian. And it's just great to be talking about these things, you know, because 1,000 children are sexually abused every day in this country, there is a sort of silent crisis happening. And if we want to eradicate it, if we want to protect the next generation, we need to begin to have these conversations. Firstly, a society that can talk openly about this sort of stuff would fucking terrify abusers. And secondly, it's so helpful for survivors to see, to be represented, and to see that, you know, they don't have to be defined by this. It is possible to go on and still live a really rich, meaningful, happy life. So yeah, really great, really positive conversation. Loved it.